Hello everyone. In this video, we will go through the details of your chapter 1, the story of Village Palampur. In the previous videos, we have seen some characteristics of the Village Palampur. So we'll have a quick recap of that. First, what is economics? Economics is a social science which studies human behavior as a relationship between unlimited wants and limited resources which have alternative uses. Then we saw the characteristics of Village Palampur. In the characteristics, we saw occupation, transport, population, use of electricity, education, and health. For occupation, we saw that main activity in Palampur is farming, and there are some other activities like dairy, transport, small manufacturing, etc. For transportation, we saw that Palampur is well connected with neighboring villages, which shows that there is a proper transportation system. In population, we saw that there are 450 families in Palampur, 80 belong to the upper caste and 1/3 are Dalits. Remaining are small landowners or landless laborers. We saw electricity was introduced early in the village Palampur, which helped in running of the tube wells and other small scale businesses. For education, we saw that there were 2 primary schools and a high school. And for health, there is 1 government-run health center and 1 private dispensary. In the next video, we saw the economic activities. So the economic activities involve production, distribution, consumption. So basically, we want to deal with production now. So what is production? Production refers to creation of goods or services for the purpose of selling in the market or for self-consumption. And the aim of production is to produce goods and services for the satisfaction of wants. Now, when the production has to take place, we need the factors of production. So in the last video, it was explained that the inputs with the help of which the process of production is carried out are called factors of production. So production involves land, labor, physical capital, which includes fixed capital as well as working capital, and human capital. So we see over here that land, labor, physical capital, and human capital together form the production. Now today we are going to see the details or the characteristics of various factors of production over here. So the characteristics of land. What is land? Land refers to all natural resources obtained from nature, that is mountains, rivers, minerals, forests, etc., with the help of which we can earn an income. There are various characteristics of land. First thing is, land is a free gift of nature. Nature doesn't charge us anything for the land that it has provided. It is the people who buy and sell the land, not the nature. Land has its own processing cost. You just cannot go sit on a land and say that I'm going to do the production process over here. You first have to get it ready for that process. Those things that you do to get the land ready for a production process are the processing costs. Third characteristic is that supply of land is fixed for a country. Every country has its boundaries. You cannot take the land of the other country into your own. So that supply of land within a country remains fixed. But yes, the land which you are using for the production process, that can increase and decrease. Now there, in the beginning, you must have read in history also that human beings first started using the fertile lands. When that land got over, they started cutting the forests or burning the forests and started bringing that land for agriculture. So this is what is done. So the operational land available in the country can be increased by clearing forests and reclaiming land from the sea. But again, this has a limit. Now you cannot just go beyond and break down the buildings and use them for production. The land which is available in the form of forests and all, that can still be used. Even tools can be used, but machineries can be used for making the barren land usable, not the others. In Palampur also, since 1960, area under cultivation has been fixed because all the wastelands have already been converted into the cultivable lands. Next characteristic is land is immobile. We cannot carry land from one place to another. The 6th characteristic of land is that it is heterogeneous. There are different types of land and every land has different parts also. Next characteristic is that it has alternative uses. one single piece of land can be used for different purposes. A person can go in for farming over there. He can build a house, or if there's a bigger land, then he can construct an industry or a factory or a small scale industry. So there are different uses. Last point is that it is a passive factor of production. What do you understand by passive factor? It means that land cannot work on its own. It needs somebody to come and work on it. So something that can work on its own is active, and something that cannot work on its own is passive. So now we will see the characteristic of labor. What is labor? Whatever physical work or mental work is done by any person, that is known as the labor. So as a definition, we would see any exertion of mind or body undergone partly or wholly for the sake of earning a living is called labor. It includes highly skilled, semi-skilled, or unskilled labor. Now the characteristics of labor are, first, labor cannot be separated from the laborer. Now, if you want some work to be done, you have to hire the laborer, and that person will work for you. Next, labor is perishable. Labor will not stay there forever. Once the work is done, it will get over. Then labor varies in efficiency. A particular person can work for 10 hours. There might be another one who can work only for 6 hours, whereas can be another one who can work for 12 hours. So the labor varies in efficiency. Now we have the physical capital. What is physical capital? The inputs that are required at every stage of production are known as physical capital. Now you require raw materials, you require cash, you require tools, you require machinery. All are included in the physical capital, but they are divided into two parts, which we'll see just now. Characteristics of capital. Again, capital cannot work on its own. It is a passive factor of production. Capital increases the productivity of land and labor. If a person has money, if he has all the capital required, then of course he can have more land and more labor for working. Now this physical capital is divided into fixed capital and working capital. The inputs which can be used in production over and over for many years are known as fixed capital. It includes the tools and machineries, because obviously when a person sets up a factory, he will not buy the machinery again and again. He will not make the building again and again. So all those are fixed capitals. Now the working capital refers to the inputs which cannot be used over and over again during the production process. The raw materials that you put in 1 year cannot be used again. The cash that is used cannot be used again. So that is working capital. Fixed capital are not used completely during the production process, whereas working capital are used up completely during the process of production. Now, the last factor of production that we'll discuss right now is the human capital. Human capital refers to the people. It refers to the knowledge and enterprise, the knowledge that a person has and the skill that a person has. Human capital is the one that brings all the other three factors of production together to produce the goods and services. If human capital is not there, other three factors of production will be of no use. So it is the organizing capability, or it is the service of the entrepreneur. I hope these all are clear now. So now I'll take you through the factors of production that are used in farming, and especially in the village Palampur. So there are different factors of production that will be used in farming also. You require land. Of course, if there's no land, there can be no production. Then you'll require labor. You'll also require capital, and you'll also require human resource. So in this video, we will concentrate only on the first factor of production that is required for farming, that is land, and we will also focus on its use in the village Palampur. So in the village Palampur, farming is the main production activity, and 75% of the working people are dependent on it for livelihood. Now there are different units of measurement that are used in India when the land is concerned. So the standard unit for measuring land is hectare. You all know 1 hectare is equal to 10,000 meters square of land, or in other words, it's also 2.48 acres of land. But the local unit of measurement that is used in villages is bigha and katha. Now, how to increase the productivity of land? That is the main concern of the people, because we saw that as a characteristic of land, the land is fixed. You cannot increase the size of the land. So if a person has 2 acres of land, he will keep having 2 acres of land only. It cannot increase. So how will a person get more production? He cannot survive with the same amount of production every year. So the first way to increase the productivity of land is multiple cropping. What is multiple cropping? When a person grows more than one crop on the piece of land during one year, it is known as multiple cropping. So for a few months, he can grow one set of crops, then next month he can grow some other crop, and so on. So in Palampur, what happens? During the rainy season, farmers grow jowar and bajra. It is used as the cattle feed. Between October and December, potato is grown. And in winter season, wheat is produced, which is their main produce, and they sell it in the market of Rajganj and they earn the money. In the leftover part, they also cultivate sugarcane. Now, with sugarcane, they use it for making jaggery, and that again is sold to the people in Shahpur. So we see over here, they are using their land for producing 4 different types of crops, which helps them in increasing their earnings. What is the basic requirement for all this? First, proper irrigation facilities are required. If proper irrigation facilities are not there and the farmers are dependent on the traditional method of rainfall, then it is very difficult to produce different types of crops or more than 2 crops in a year. Another thing is the farmers should have sufficient capital to invest and meet the farm expenses. They will need pesticides, they will need fertilizers, they will need electricity. So for all this, they need capital. So one of the ways to increase the productivity of land is multiple cropping. Now, use of electricity and well-developed system of irrigation, we are going to have a look at it for village Palampur. The major impact of the spread of electricity in Palampur was transformation of the system of irrigation. Electricity helped the farmers to shift from traditional Persian wheels to electricity-run tube wells. Then the irrigation capacity of tube wells is obviously more than that of the Persian wheels. And then electricity leads the whole society from darkness to light. In Palampur, initially the tube wells were installed by the government, but then later on when the farmers saw that the other farmers who had the tube wells were doing better, so they installed it privately as well. So by mid-1970s, the entire cultivated area of 200 hectares was irrigated by tube wells. In India, only 40% of total cultivated area is irrigated. Rest depends traditionally on rainfall. Now, ways to increase the productivity of land, part 2. We use modern farming methods for higher yield. What is yield over here first? We need to know the meaning of yield. Yield refers to the total production on a given piece of land during a single season. Before mid-1960s, only traditional methods of farming were used in India. So what are the traditional methods? In traditional methods, low yielding traditional seeds are used, and then they use manure, natural ones, the cow dung manure. There are no fertilizers, and they also depend on rainfall. So at that time, the production is a little less. So what should be done? They started thinking, what should be done to increase the productivity? So in 1960s, they brought the Green Revolution. What is Green Revolution? It refers to a rapid and sustained increase in the output of agricultural crops. Now in Green Revolution, they had a focus on main 3 things. First thing was HYV seeds. HYV seeds means high yielding variety of seeds. The second thing that they focused on was the chemical fertilizers. And the last thing was irrigation. The reason for concentrating on these 3 things together was only one thing would not work. High yielding variety seeds were developed by mixing and breeding two to three different good variety of seeds. Now, when these seeds are used, a lot of water is required for them. So irrigation had to be there. And then when you are using a lot of water and all, these cannot survive without chemical fertilizers because they need a lot of nutrition. So this was a combination of these three things which helped the Green Revolution to take place in India. So in modern farming methods, what did they actually focus on? First, use of high yielding variety of seeds. They were invented so that there could be more grain on a single plant itself. Second, they focused on irrigation facilities. I just told you the irrigation facilities were compulsory because HYV seeds could not survive without proper irrigation because they needed a lot of water. Different methods of irrigation like canals, dams, tube wells, etc. were used. Then there was use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides because they add to the fertility of soil and increase the productivity. Last is the use of modern machineries. Now the production is so huge that if the farmer alone will go and start harvesting the things, it will be very difficult for him. So tractors and threshers and other modern machineries became compulsory in the modern farming methods. So in short, when we want to see what does modern farming method include, we'll see like this. Modern farming methods include HYV seeds, fertilizers, modern farm machinery, pesticides, and irrigation. So when the Green Revolution took place, all these things were made available. The father of Green Revolution in India is Mr. M.S. Swaminathan. And over the world, it's Norman E. Borlaug. So after Green Revolution, this was the picture of Indian production of wheat, in fact, food grains. So in the year 1965 to 66, you can see there were 56.8 million tons of food grains. And when you see just after two levels, when you see in 2005 and 6, see the increase. It has gone to 211 million tons. Then just after 3 years, 2008 and 9, it's gone to 227.3 million tons. For some reason, it went a little low in 2009 and 10, but again, it increased in 10 and 11, and in 11 and 12, it is 252.56 million tons. So Green Revolution has helped a lot in the Indian agricultural system. Now there is a problem. Why did Green Revolution turn out to be a wheat revolution? What happened was, in the beginning, only the HYV seeds of wheat were developed and distributed. So all the farmers, those who were given these seeds, they started earning more. So the other farmers also got interested in the same type of seed, and they also started using the HYV seeds of wheat. Therefore, Green Revolution got limited to wheat because that was giving a lot of money to the farmers. Why did Green Revolution get concentrated only in a few regions? Now see, we just saw the requirements of the modern farming methods. HYV seeds, if you're using, you need a lot of water, that's proper irrigation, and you also need the fertilizers and pesticides. These facilities were available only in a particular part of the country. These were the Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh. So wherever these facilities were available, those were the area where the Green Revolution started and went to the peak, and the first fruits of Green Revolution were enjoyed by the farmers who were there. I hope this has become clear now. Now the modern farming method which we are talking about, it has some harmful effects also on the land. Because we are using the high yielding variety of seeds, we are using the fertilizers, we are using the pesticides, we are using a lot of water from the ground. There are some ways in which the nature gets affected. So what are the harmful effects on land? First is pollution of groundwater, rivers, and lakes. How does that happen? It is because of increased use of chemical fertilizers. Chemical fertilizers provide minerals, but which dissolve in water, and they are immediately available to plants so that they can grow very fast. But some of this part does not remain in the soil, but it escapes from the soil and goes into the groundwater. This pollutes the groundwater, river, and lakes. The second harmful effect is loss of fertility of soil. How does this happen? Actually, chemical fertilizers can kill bacteria and other microorganisms in the soil. So the soil becomes less fertile. Fertilizers also start losing their effectiveness because the land is losing fertility. So what the farmer will do is, instead of using, like suppose the last year he used 10 kg of fertilizers, but he feels that this time also he wants the same produce. So instead of 10 kg, he will say, okay, I want the same produce. If the land is getting less fertile, I'll put in 15 kgs of fertilizer. So he starts putting in more fertilizers. So slowly, fertilizers also start losing their effectiveness. In place of 10, they'll start use 15 kgs, then 20 kgs, and so on. So in order to maintain the given level of yield or production, farmers have to use large quantity of fertilizers. The third one is cost of cultivation increases. See, when you're using the fertilizers, pesticides, you're using irrigation, you have to make payment for all these things. Natural manure is free of cost. It's made of cow dung, it's made of the decomposed plants and other things. But here you have to pay for fertilizers, you have to pay for pesticides, you have to pay the electricity bill for irrigation. So the cost of cultivation increases. More and more chemical fertilizers and other inputs will be needed to achieve the same production level as the natural fertility of soil has been reduced and the cultivation cost increases. There's reduction in water table. Now what happens is, when you're using tube well irrigation, a lot of underground water is used. This reduces the water table. So you see that there are a number of harmful effects with the modern farming methods. But if we don't use the modern farming methods, then the production will be low. So there has to be a balance between what is done and how it is done. So I hope that both the methods, multiple cropping and modern farming methods, are clear to you all. So we'll just see a next slide in which we'll see the distribution of land in Palampur also and in India also. In Palampur, we have already seen that there are 150 people who do not possess any land. There are 240 people who have less than 2 hectares or more, and there are 60 families who have 2 hectares or more. This we saw in how the population was distributed. The upper caste, 60, 240 is the landless owners or the laborers, and 150 were the Dalits. In India, what happens? We see here there are 2 diagrams. One is the cultivated area and one is the number of farmers. Now the yellow part belongs to the medium and large farmers, and the light purple one belongs to the small farmers. Now you see in the cultivated area, only 36% of that land, and it belongs to 80% of the people over there. You see this blue area and this blue area here. So 36% of the land is owned by 80% of the people, and the yellow one, belongs to the medium and large farmers. That is 64% of the land belongs to 20% people. So it's quite an opposite distribution over here. So when we see in India, 64% of the total area under cultivation is cultivated by the large and medium farmers, who constitute only 20% of the total number of farmers in India. Small farmers, who account for 80% of the total population, cultivate only 36% of the total land. Thus, we see that there's unequal land distribution in India also and in Palampur also. Size of land holdings. The average size of land holding keeps declining due to division and subdivision of holdings. Now, what happens is, you see these as small farmers. Now, there is a system of law of succession and inheritance in India. What happens in that is that if a father has 4 sons, so the entire land will be divided into 4 parts. So suppose there is 8 hectares of land, it goes, after the death of the father, it goes to 4 sons. It is like 2, 2, 2 and 2 for 4 sons. Now each son has 2 more sons, and slowly it will become 1 hectare per person. So this law of succession and inheritance, this is one of the reasons why the farmers have very small lands in India. The law of succession and inheritance provides equal distribution of assets among all the successors of a dead person. If a person has more than one child, land is divided accordingly, and as a result, the average size of the land per person falls. I hope, children, you've understood how the land is distributed in India and Palampur and how the land, production on land can increase. In the next video, we will learn about labor that is required in agriculture, both in India as well as in Palampur. That's all for this video. God bless you. Stay home, stay safe.